I do want to move on to Donald Trump and the Republicans. Right now, Nancy Gibbs, you sat down with him this week. He was on the cover of Time magazine. He's just about everywhere right now, and it certainly seems to be working so far, leading, the lead, which a lot of people thought would dissipate, solidifying across the summer.
We talk about politics like it's physics with immutable laws. With him, everything that was supposed to sink him has lifted him instead. And so I think the fascinating question now is not what he would or would not do if he were president. I think it's what he will and will not do as a candidate.
Doesn't seem like he's going to answer a lot of that.
He's not going to answer a lot of that. And it's August. Why write the end of the story when what we're seeing is a fascinating change in the landscape that is affecting, obviously, the other Republican candidates. It's affecting the conversation. It has many more people paying attention than we have ever seen at this stage of a race. That, which I think is all to the good. To be having 24 million people tune into a debate is great.
Stunning.
And is amazing. And so, what I'm very interested in is he the only one who can make the moves that he is making, say the things that he is saying? We have seen other candidates who go down the same road. When Jeb Bush uses the term anchor babies, he gets in much more trouble for it, I think, because people know that he knows that that's not a term he should be using, and it makes him look disingenuous.
Now, in truth, he didn't use it as his own language. He was using it as a term of reference, so he's using it in a completely different way than Donald Trump was.
But he does seem to be playing by, or at least held to a different set of rules, a different set of standards. But Matt, you're digging into the numbers a little bit, and you think there's a little bit less strength there than meets the eye.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of digging, and you did try to pin him down pretty well on what he's actually going to do, which I commend you for. You kind of got nowhere with him, but you tried, right?
But it's all you can do is ask the question.
I mean, look, I don't think we're reporting this with a lot of perspective. I get that it's a great story, but look, he has a finite plurality right now of the Republican electorate, because he is the collision of entertainment and politics. He's a TV star, and he's hit on an issue that brings out a great well of emotion in some segment of the Republican electorate. But look, the reason we talk about Donald Trump as winning, solidifying a lead, winning among groups, is because the broad swath of the Republican electorate is divided among all the, everybody over the position of dog catcher is running for president. You've got more than 10 serious candidates, which means they're all dividing the field, and right now, nobody has stepped up to sort of fill that void. But that's the question. Why
can no one else consolidate any support?
Yeah, it's been remarkable. No idea, no policy proposal, no argument from the other candidates has caught fire the way Donald Trump has. And yes, Matt, I think you're right. It's a finite plurality, but every other candidate would kill to have that finite plurality right now. And you have to believe the evidence of your eyes. 30,000 people in Mobile, Alabama. He's generated a kind of enthusiasm we haven't seen in Republican primary politics in a very long time.
But that's not Iowa. That's not New Hampshire. And if part of this, we have to admit, is the media giving him so much oxygen. He's such a great story that it's very hard for anybody to
There's no question about that. But the question
is,
where does the energy go now that it has been unleashed? And that's the question I want to bring to you, because there's this big debate going on. Does he end up defining the Republican Party with some of these positions, or do his rivals define themselves in opposition to him?
Yeah, I think there's people who've taken different tacks that are running. Some of them are running towards him. Some of them are confronting him. And I think it's going to, frankly, depend on who ends up being the nominee. If the nominee is somebody like a Jeb Bush, like a John Kasich, like a Marco Rubio, I think, no, he's not going to end up defining the Republican Party. Now, if it ends up being, which I don't think is going to be the case, Donald Trump or somebody like Ted Cruz, who's run very close to him, then we have a completely different perspective. But I think Donald Trump has figured this out. He's got us all running in the Donald Trump hamster wheel. He says something controversial. We cover it. They make everybody else running, react to it. And we go from one controversy to another.
I've run for office for 30 years. Crowds, polls, that doesn't get the vote out. What gets the vote out is organization, get your base out. My prediction is this guy, towards early in the Iowa caucuses, flames out. He'll be a factor, but he won't win.
Who's positioning themselves best to pick up his votes if he does indeed fall?
Probably Ted Cruz. I think he's being underestimated. He very well could win Iowa. And if he wins Iowa, he has much more resources and organization than the past winners of Iowa, Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee. But I think one thing people underappreciate about Trump, this isn't just a right-wing phenomenon. You look at his supporters, it's across the party. It's not just Tea Partiers, it's moderates. So it could scatter in unpredictable ways if he does indeed
and Nancy, when you sat down with us this week, and I've been getting the sense from him and his people that over the course of the summer, they have been focusing more and more on what comes after Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, and he's at least planning on being in for a real long time.
I mean, I think they've been taken by, and we asked how surprised he was by this. It isn't just the political class that has been sort of shocked by what has happened. I think he is too. But you know, it's really worth remembering that above all, this is a very successful salesman, and what we are seeing right now is an act of salesmanship. I don't think this is about policy as much as talk about the immigration plan. I'm not sure he is fully aware of everything in the immigration plan. During our interview, some of the things he said weren't entirely aligned with what is actually in the white paper. I think right now this is much more about the discontent people feel with everything about our political system. It isn't anger, I think, so much as discouragement. And they're willing to experiment. They're willing to experiment with someone who sounds very different than the last guy they experimented with, you know, which was Barack Obama, who too
I
came in with
wouldn't
a very
underestimate
different.
the importance of the immigration issue, because this is the issue where the elites of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, are most out of touch with popular sentiment. Now, we're not going to deport everyone. We're not going to bring them back.
He says
Both
you
sides
are.
of those equations
That's a
are
very
kind of,
small-
are
the
absurd.
the deport
but
is
he
a
is
very
hitting on
small minority.
something very important and is pulling the Republican field in a more populist direction on immigration, which I think is very
But it's
welcome.
going to it's going to cost Election Day with the Hispanic vote. 40% is what any Republican candidate needs to win the presidency. Mitt Romney talked about self-deportation. He got 23%. And I believe Donald Trump is, because of the Hispanic vote, is going to be so insulted by what he has said. And that's 11% of the vote, over 20 million voters.
Yeah, I mean, when Rich talks about how it's driving the field, this is where I think the other Republican candidates really are making a mistake. They seem to think, and maybe driven somewhat by the media that they're consuming, they seem to think that they need to out-Trump Trump to get his voters. That broad base of the Republican electorate, the votes they actually can get and should get, hasn't found a candidate. And they should be speaking, I think, to that constituency, which can put them over the top instead of trying to get voters there.
Which may be why Jeb Bush took him.
I don't think everybody's trying to out-Trump Trump. I think there are candidates in this field who are confronting Trump.
That's
So
going to
you
be the
can't
last
paint
word
everybody
today.
with
We're
the
going to be
same
right back
brush.
after this from our ABC stations.